Just remember, guys, with the macro, the important things to really remember are your workers, your military, your houses, and your upgrades. So basically, as long as you're working towards aging up and looking at defending or attacking as best you can, more or less just run those things through your head. You know, villages, military, houses, upgrades. Military, villages, houses, upgrades, or any variation of that. But as long as you're sort of running that through your head every couple of seconds, as well as maintaining as much control over your army and continuing to scout over the map as best you can. It all comes with experience and speed, and I sort of have mentioned in one of the other videos, it's not so much about your actions per minute as your screens per minute and your time to react. The three of them are all sort of intertwined and come down a lot to efficient practice. People like Carnage, PF2K, Recon, Eerie, Zertan, they didn't really get that fast overnight. And they've probably got little tricks themselves, similar to that nature, where they just run through their heads, while they're also doing what's called control group cycling. So that's sort of when you flick from your town center to your military, to your military production, to your upgrade facilities, maybe to your market if you've got one, to another military group, and so on. Like, it's the same sort of concept. You're running these little things over and over in your head, and eventually you teach yourself to be slowly faster and faster at flicking through them, like flicking through pages in a book or like through a deck of cards, and you can at any given moment pull out the right card that you need to pull out at that stage of the game. And it's a process that just, I guess, neurologically just gets faster as the more you play, as well as, like I said, efficient practice, sort of study. I guess the more useful things for you to study, it's not necessarily the same thing for everybody, because we're all at different levels of play. Things that are going to help, say, Striker and Eerie beat Carnage and Zertan aren't going to be the same things I'm going to need to focus on to try and get consistent wins over Crimson, for instance. And you guys that are a bit newer in the game, it's sort of the same, really. A lot of the time you just sort of need a bit of a nudge in the right direction with general builds and strategies you can use to try and topple your opponent, or at least get under his skin early, really force him into a bad position late game that he's not comfortable with, and he ends up either tapping out, or you slowly choke him out and then he taps out 15-20 minutes later because you've solidified an early advantage. You're feeling really confident with where you're going in the game, and you've really cut him down economically, secured map control, sort of remembered the basics, like I said, squeezed out the early town centre, squeezed out the early dock, squeezed out the early barracks, stables, range, whatever have you. And all these things, it takes a lot of practice to really, for it all to come together in a sense, and for you to get it right every single game. It's a process that probably took me close to 1,000 games, really, to get to where I am today. And I'm probably the better player in my region, but that doesn't really mean much when fucking Germany and Portugal are sort of the fortresses to really improve against. I'm not even really consistent against the Eastern European or America's players, really. So it all takes practice, but I think these tips that I'm doing and that a couple of the other guys are doing are going to be really helpful for you guys in sort of trying to understand how you can approach different games and matchups, and run over these little things in your head, little concepts. Don't forget to try and check out videos on macro in Age of Empires or even in other RTS, because they're really, really helpful getting to the point where you can comfortably use macro hotkeys for all of your production, military and economic base, and all your upgrades, fitting in within good times, getting your including your age ups on time, and even keeping a good eye on your army, all your different control groups. For that, a lot of the good players, they really don't necessarily have to use 5 or 6 at once. No, they only really have to use up to 3, 1 or 2 generally. But it's being able to flick from one point of the map to the other, and then even be able to freehand with the mouse and do what they have to do to get the little decisive thing that they need to get done. Whether it's taking a good fight, pulling their army back and saving it, flicking back to their base to queue up a bunch of things, or whatever have you. And a lot of people are quite critical of spamming, which I can sort of understand. It looks a bit weird when you're watching mid-level sort of do it and they're not really getting a lot out of it. But in saying that, a lot of the time it is really just them practicing what I said earlier, their control group cycling. But anyway, guys, this is a bit more of a ramble than I intended it to be. I'll catch you on the ladder.